Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're taking a whole stack of sources, history, research, articles, and boiling it all down for you. We're strapping in for a high-speed, high-stakes look at what is, I think, the American West's most paradoxical place, Nevada.
It's funny, when most people think of Nevada, the image is pretty limited, isn't it? It's neon slot machines, or maybe that old Silver State nickname you hear about.
Exactly. But Nevada is this land of multiple, often contradictory identities. I mean, you have the sagebrush state for the native plants, and then you have the really powerful one, the battle-born state.
And that nickname, it isn't just a historical footnote. It literally means the state was born right in the middle of the Civil War, October 31st, 1864. Halloween of all days.
And as we're going to see, that whole act was driven by pure political necessity. It had almost nothing to do with a stable population.
Right, so our deep dive today is all about synthesizing this comprehensive overview of this really remarkable place. We're looking at its unique history, its libertarian legal structure, and these massive economic and environmental challenges. The goal, really, is to give you a full picture of the state that exists way beyond the lights of Vegas and Reno.
And when you start digging into the sources, you immediately hit that defining paradox. This is a state of extremes. Geographically, it's the driest state in the country.
And yet, it has these huge mountain ranges with peaks over 13,000 feet.
Demographically, it's one of the most centralized places in America. I mean, think about this. Almost 3/4 of the entire population lives in one county, the Las Vegas area.
But, and this is the kicker, over 80% of its total land area is managed by the federal government.
That's the core tension, isn't it? This hyper-concentrated sort of libertarian urban core sitting inside this massive, arid, federally owned wilderness.
That's the DNA of modern Nevada. It's this constant battle between state sovereignty and federal control, private enterprise, and public land.
Before we jump into all that, we have to be one quick note. It's a small thing, but it's important if you're talking to a resident. Let's talk about the pronunciation.
Ah, yes. This is the difference between sounding like an outsider and a local. Most people lean into the Spanish origin, Nevada, which means snow-covered, so they use that soft ah sound.
But the locals don't say it that way, do they?
Not at all. Nevadans themselves use a shorter, harder A, like in the word apple. So it's Fayez-Vade. It's a small detail, but it really speaks to the state's its fierce regional identity.
Okay, so with that out of the way, let's unpack this history, because the story of how the state even came to exist it's just incredible.
We should start, of course, with the indigenous and colonial roots. This land was home to several key tribes for millennia. You have the Goshu, the Southern Paiute, the Mojave, and the Washoe people.
And then the Spanish arrived. They were the first Europeans to explore the area, with Francisco Garces coming through in the late 1700s. And ironically, for what is now the driest state, they're the ones who named it Nevada, snowy, for the snow-capped Sierra Nevada mountains on the western border.
Right. And for a while, the region was part of New Spain, then Alta California under Mexico. That all changed in 1848 with the Mexican-American War. The U.S. annexed the territory, and it became part of the new Utah territory.
And this is where the cultural influence of Utah, and specifically the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, becomes absolutely foundational.
It really does. In the mid-19th century, the Mormons established their proposed state of Deseret, which claimed a huge chunk of what would become Nevada.
And they weren't just making claims on a map, they were building.
Yeah. They established the first permanent non-native settlement in 1851 called Mormon Station. Today it's the town of Genoa. And these little settlements were absolutely crucial supply points for people heading west.
And they had a foothold down south, too, right? In the Las Vegas Valley.
They did. Mormon missionaries built a 150-foot square adobe fort there in 1855. It was basically a supply post on the route between Salt Lake City and the Pacific.
So what you're saying is this early history kind of infused the state with these cultural influences from Utah and even New Mexico in the food and architecture.
Exactly. They were the only organized groups really capable of building permanent structures in such a hostile, remote, and arid place.
But religion and agriculture didn't spark the creation of the state itself. That was all about geology.
That was the game changer. The discovery of the Comstock Lode near Virginia City in 1859. And this wasn't just a silver strike. It was the first major discovery of silver ore in the U.S., and one of the biggest ever found globally.
And that just kicked off an immediate, massive population boom.
A huge boom. And that sudden influx of miners and opportunists gave Congress the reason it needed to carve the Nevada territory out of Utah in 1861. The wealth coming out of the ground was incredible. It actually financed a significant portion of the Union's war effort.
Which brings us right back to that nickname, Battleborn. Nevada becomes the 36th state just 8 days before the 1864 presidential election.
And the rush was so aggressive, the state had, what, barely 40,000 residents? That's way below the usual 60,000 Congress required for statehood.
So why the political desperation? It wasn't just about getting Lincoln reelected, was it?
No, it was bigger than that. It was about solidifying Republican Party dominance after the Civil War. Lincoln needed two things. Reliable electoral votes, yes, but also future senators and representatives who would vote for the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery.
And Nevada, with its economy tied to the Union through silver, was a pretty sure bet.
It was a lock. But to meet the deadline, they had to get the entire state constitution to Washington immediately. And after a couple of failed attempts to send the physical document, they did something just unprecedented. On October 26, 1864,
The famous telegram.
they telegraphed the full text of the Constitution, every single word.
And the cost. I mean, the sources on this are amazing. That one single dispatch cost $4,303.27.
Which today would be over $86,500. It was the most expensive single telegraph ever sent at that time.
A massive financial gamble. But it paid off politically. The confirmation arrived on October 31st.
And what's interesting is that Lincoln ended up winning the election pretty easily. He didn't strictly need Nevada's votes, but statehood was secured. And this set a precedent for a state defined by political motivation. And it didn't stop there. Nevada is one of only 2 states to significantly expand its borders after admission.
Right, Missouri is the other one. So they weren't satisfied. They kept going.
They expanded eastward in 1866, taking more land from Utah. And then, crucially, in 1867, they absorbed a huge piece of Arizona territory, basically everything west of the Colorado River.
Which includes modern-day Las Vegas, Clark County.
Exactly. And the motivation, according to the sources, was another resource discovery. Gold was found in that area. So Nevada officials argued to Congress, hey, we have the mining infrastructure. We're better equipped to handle this than Arizona's territorial government. And they won.
It was always about the minerals and the control over them.
Always. And even though that first silver boom faded, a second one kicked off around 1900 with strikes at Tonopah, then Goldfield and Rhyolite.
And that boom left behind some really unique architectural leftovers.
It really did. I mean, the extreme conditions forced people to be resourceful. You see it in places like Rhyolite, which once had 10,000 people. And one of the things still standing is the Bottle House.
The Bottle House, right, built in 1906.
Using an estimated 50,000 discarded beer and liquor bottles, all mortared together. It's just a wonderful, absurd testament to frontier ingenuity and, the lack of traditional building materials.
So a state literally built on telegraph wires, political deals, and silver. That rapid expansionist mindset really set the stage for its modern identity, which, as we're about to see, is about monetizing a lot more than just minerals.
And that transition from monetizing minerals to monetizing sovereignty, that is the key to understanding Nevada. As historian Lawrence Friedman put it, Nevada built an economy by exploiting its sovereignty.
Meaning it legislated profit, it made things legal that were illegal or really restricted everywhere else, especially in next-door California.
Absolutely. And this strategy became vital during the Great Depression. Unregulated gambling, which was common in the old mining camps, had actually been outlawed in 1909.
Part of a national moral crusade.
Exactly. But by the early 1930s, the state's economy was collapsing. Mining was down. Agriculture couldn't sustain the population.
So economic desperation forced them to do a complete 180.
In 1931, the state legislature passed a bill to legalize unregulated gambling again. The move was explicitly designed to create a brand new economic engine from scratch.
And here's another one of those fascinating historical convergences. The sources all highlight this. Gambling was legalized just 8 days after the federal government presented the massive $49 million contract for Boulder Dam,
which we now know as Hoover Dam.
Yeah.
And that project brought thousands of workers and a huge amount of federal money right to the southern part of the state, ensuring that the new gambling halls had a ready-made local clientele.
And at the same time, Nevada was also enacting the most liberal divorce laws in the country.
They realized that if they shortened the residency requirement down to just 6 weeks, they could create a lucrative divorce haven. Wealthy Americans could come for a quick, easy end to a marriage, far from the strict laws back east.
And that created a whole cultural ecosystem, didn't it? People would come, set up temporary residency, and spend a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. Specialized businesses popped up. Hotels marketed to them. Dude ranches. where wealthy Easterners could ride horses while waiting out the 6 weeks. The state was literally profiting from broken marriages.
And this led to some major legal challenges, right? All the way to the Supreme Court.
It did. The Williams v. North Carolina cases in the 1940s. The court eventually said that, yes, other states have to recognize a Nevada divorce, but only if one of the parties had genuinely established a legal residency there.
And even today, Nevada's divorce rate is still way above the national average, a legacy of that policy.
That same libertarian impulse is still there in the modern legal landscape, but it's just full of contradictions. Let's take prostitution, for example.
Okay. Nevada is the only U.S. state where prostitution is legal in licensed brothels.
But, and this is a huge, but it's only legal in counties with a population under 400,000.
Which means it's explicitly illegal in the 3 places people actually visit. Clark County for Las Vegas, Washoe County for Reno, and Carson City, the capital.
Exactly. It's often highly visible in the state's marketing, but the industry itself is actually tiny compared to tourism. It employs about 300 women who work as independent contractors. It's an industry that exists, in large part, just to maintain the state's reputation for maximum liberty.
And the alcohol laws are another example of that. Just famously liberal.
Oh, yeah. Bars, liquor stores, convenience stores, supermarkets, they can all sell every type of alcohol 24/7. There's no concept of a last call in Nevada. It's truly unique.
But the biggest paradox is in the drug laws. You'd think a state that prioritizes personal freedom would be progressive here, and they are, in some ways. They approved medical marijuana in 2000, recreational in 2016.
Yet at the same time, Nevada is notorious for having some of the absolute harshest penalties for non-alcohol drug offenses in the country. It's the only state that still widely uses mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines just for simple possession.
Which leads to these wildly disproportionate sentences for minor crimes. Why the split?
It often comes down to political compromise. To get a ballot measure for cannabis passed, lawmakers have to appease more conservative groups by showing they're tough on crime in other areas. It creates this strange laboratory testing the limits of personal choice versus state control.
And that push for economic liberty is maybe most powerful in the state's tax and corporate environment.
It's designed almost entirely to lure people and companies from high-tax states like California.
That's the zero tax draw. No personal income tax, no corporate income tax. And a fascinating consequence of that is that the state legally cannot share income data with the IRS.
Which is a huge draw for high net worth individuals. And corporations benefit massively too. The state statutes are incredibly friendly. Lots of flexibility for boards of directors, no franchise tax. It's very easy to incorporate there.
And this extends to the financial sector, where state laws are essentially imported for national benefit. Can you explain that?
Well, many states have usury laws, which cap the maximum interest rate a lender can charge you to prevent predatory lending. Nevada has no cap on interest rates that are agreed to in a contract.
Ah, so federal law allows a bank to incorporate in Nevada?
And then import those permissive interest rate laws when they lend money to clients in other states. It's a massive draw for credit card companies and other financial institutions.
The one tax everyone pays is sales tax, and here you see the cost of that hyper-centralized population. The statewide minimum is 6.85%, but in Clark County it jumps to 8.375%.
And that higher rate is necessary because it's paying for all the extra infrastructure that Las Vegas needs. You have specific local option taxes for flood control, mass transit, law enforcement. The high rates in the urban core are literally paying for the consequences of the state's explosive growth and its challenging geography.
And we really have to talk about that geography. We've established Nevada's economy is defined by this idea of legal freedom, but its physical reality is. It's defined by these unforgiving, extreme environmental constraints.
It is statistically the driest state in the U.S. It's almost entirely desert and semi-arid because it sits in the rain shadow of the Sierra Nevada mountains. The average annual rainfall is only about 7 inches. Just meager.
And the topography is so unique. It's almost all within what geographers call the Basin and Range Province.
Right, which is basically a series of parallel north-south mountain ranges separated by these flat, arid valleys or basins.
And the state is divided, hydrographically speaking. The north is mostly in the Great Basin,
which is a mild desert climate, hot summers, cold winters. And crucially, the rivers there, like the Humboldt and the Truckee, are endorheic.
Wait, endorheic? For the listener, what does that technical term actually mean in practical terms?
It means the water never reaches the ocean. These rivers drain inward into closed basins, and they form sinks or unique salt lakes like Pyramid Lake. Practically, it means water is scarce, it's isolated, and it's incredibly valuable. It leads to intense competition over very limited resources.
Now, contrast that with the south, with the Las Vegas Valley.
That area is in the Mojave Desert. It's much lower in elevation, so less winter rain, but it's closer to the influence of the Arizona monsoon in the summer, and the temperatures are just extreme. The state record high, 125 degrees Fahrenheit, was set down there in Laughlin.
And yet, despite the desert floor, Nevada is, counterintuitively, one of the highest states by mean altitude. And those north-south mountain ranges create something really special for biologists.
They create what are often called sky islands. These are cool, wet, high-altitude ecological zones with lush forests sitting high above the arid plains. They harbor unique species that can't survive in the desert below. Peaks routinely exceed 13,000 feet.
And Nevada actually ranks second only to Alaska for the greatest number of mountains in the U.S.
That's right, 172 summits with at least 2,000 feet of what's called prominence.
Which, in geography, means how high a mountain is compared to its immediate surroundings, not just sea level. It emphasizes the sheer scale of the landscape.
And this harsh, varied geography leads us right to the most critical constraint on the state's development, that massive federal footprint.
The number is just staggering. 80.1% of Nevada's land is managed by the federal government. That's not just a quirk. It shapes everything about the state.
The sources explain this as a historical hangover from the failure of the Homestead Act in the Dry West. A typical 160-acre homestead just wasn't big enough to survive on.
Right. So early settlers realized they only had to claim the small piece of land around a water source, like a spring or a creek.
And then they could let their livestock graze on the immense, unclaimed public land all around them. So the state government never really got control of the majority of its own land.
And a lot of that federally managed land then became essential for national security.
That's the legacy of the Cold War. The Nevada test site, 65 miles northwest of Vegas, was active from 1951 until underground testing finally ended in '92. It has, by far, the highest concentration of nuclear detonated weapons in the entire United States.
And the military presence goes way beyond testing. You have major bases like Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas.
And Naval Air Station Fallon, which is globally important. It's home to the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center, which consolidated several schools, including the Navy Fighter Weapons School.
Which everyone knows as TOPDN.
Exactly. And of course, there's the highly secretive Area 51 near Groom Lake and the Tonopah Test Range.
So connecting this arid environment to modern concerns, Nevada is on the front lines of water security, but it's also a leader in new energy.
The severe droughts are a massive strain on the Colorado River and Lake Mead. Las Vegas has had to implement one of the country's most aggressive water recycling programs just to survive.
And on the energy front, it gets immense amounts of sun, and voters have mandated investment in solar power. It's also developing the largest lithium mine in the U.S., which is essential for electric vehicle batteries.
It is, but this is where that balance of corporate power and regulation gets really tricky. We have to talk about the 2015 solar collapse.
Absolutely. The sources show that an independent study in 2013 found that rooftop solar users were actually providing a net financial benefit of $36 million to the state's grid.
Yeah.
But in December 2015, the Public Utility Commission, the PUC, made this sweeping, controversial change.
The PUC, which regulates the state's near-monopoly utility, NV Energy, decided to let the utility charge substantially higher rates and fees to existing rooftop solar users.
And it just collapsed the solar installation industry overnight. Thousands of jobs were lost. It was this stark demonstration of the immense regulatory power wielded by the PUC over the state.
And finally, you have another major federal project with huge implications. Yucca Mountain, designated by Congress in 1987 as the only site to be considered as a permanent repository for the nation's highly radioactive waste.
Just another example of the federal government using this vast, arid landscape for its own national purposes.
So let's shift to the people who were drawn to live in this paradoxical place. Nevada's demographic story is just defined by this explosive, hyper-centralized, and non-native growth.
It was, percentage-wise, the fastest-growing state in the U.S. from the 1940s all the way until 2003. I mean, the population just ballooned by 66% between 1990 and 2000 alone. It's a modern frontier.
But that growth is highly, highly localized. As we said, 73% of the entire state lives in Clark County, the Vegas area, and that creates these immense political and infrastructure demands.
And what's interesting is the geographic center of the population isn't even in Vegas. It's about 60 miles west. in a town called Pahrump.
which itself has exploded in size, reflecting that constant push for suburbanization and lower costs near the major hub.
And all this rapid growth means the vast majority of Nevadans are transplants. The sources say that since 1950, the rate of people born in Nevada has never gone above 27%.
Right. In 2012, only a quarter of the residents were actually born there. That gives Nevada the lowest rate of native-born residents of all 50 states.
And that influx, especially from California, has driven extraordinary diversification. It's now the third most diverse state in the country, behind only Hawaii and California.
And the non-Hispanic white population has dropped significantly, from 65% in 2000 to just under 46% in 2020.
The diversification is rapid and it's multifaceted. Hispanic or Latino residents are now the fastest growing ethnic group, making up nearly 29% of the population.
Mostly from Mexican, Salvadoran, and Cuban heritage, drawn largely by the massive service and construction jobs in Vegas.
The Asian population is also really significant, over 8.5%, and within that, Filipino Americans are the largest group. They alone are 6.4% of the state's entire population.
And historically, you can see how the economic booms dictated who came. Chinese miners in the gold rushes, then Japanese farm workers. The second mining boom drew waves of European immigrants, Irish, English, German, and notably, Basques were specifically recruited from Spain to be sheep herders.
But this demographic profile is highly segregated by geography, which creates an intense political and cultural divide.
Absolutely. The small percentage of the population in the huge rural counties like Esmeralda, Eureka, they are culturally and demographically distinct. They're less diverse and often consist of residents who are native to Nevada.
And their economies are totally different, still based on the original frontier stuff, mining and cattle ranching.
And this creates a cultural tension where the rural minority feels increasingly marginalized by the urban majority. We should also touch on the religious landscape, which, like the population, is very transient. Church attendance in Nevada is among the lowest in the U.S.
A 2009 poll found only 30% reported attending weekly or almost weekly, and the breakdown is fragmented. 40% are religiously unaffiliated, 25% Protestant, 21% Catholic.
But the state's history still shows. Parts of eastern Nevada are still firmly in the Mormon corridor. So Latter-day Saints still account for about 5% of the total population, showing that enduring legacy of those first settlements.
So we have this massive, centralized, diverse, and transient population. How does the economy even support all of that? And the answer is still, largely, that calculated risk the state took back in 1931, tourism and entertainment.
Those sectors are still Nevada's largest employers and key economic drivers. But the sources highlight a massive shift away from just gaming revenue.
Let's put some numbers on that. In 2022, the casinos brought in $10.7 billion in gaming revenue, which is huge. But they brought in even more, $15.7 billion in non-gaming revenue.
That's the shift. It's not just slot machines anymore. It's high-end restaurants, world-class conventions, shopping, spectacles. Vegas sells the full experience now.
And we have to acknowledge the historical element of how that started. The initial development in Las Vegas was driven by mining interests and later by figures associated with organized crime.
The mob. That's a crucial point. Figures like Bugsy Siegel provided the initial high-risk capital to build the first massive casino hotels that put Vegas on the map. It created this culture of risk and very rapid development.
And that began to change in the 60s and 70s as corporate consolidation took over.
Right, led by figures like Howard Hughes and Kirk Kerkorian. They brought in immense legitimate capital and successfully pushed the mob's influence out, leading to the corporate entertainment machine we see today.
And the infrastructure to support all this is just incredible. Nevada has the most hotel rooms per capita in the entire United States.
It maintains one hotel room for every 14 residents. The national average is one for every 67. That density is just, it's hard to even visualize.
But outside the urban centers, the original economy is still going strong. Mining plays a profound global role.
It really does. Nevada is the fourth largest producer of gold in the entire world. In 2022, the state accounted for 4% of total world gold production, valued at $7.3 billion. It's a dominant global player.
And even older than silver is ranching. Cattle ranching is still a major economic activity.
Especially in the northern and eastern counties. In 2020, there were over 438,000 cattle and 71,000 sheep in the state.
And what's fascinating is what they grow for them in such an arid place.
Over 90% of Nevada's cropland is used to grow hay, mostly alfalfa. It's high water use, but it's high-value feed for livestock, and a lot of it is exported.
This geographically split economy is constantly challenged by the state's lack of cohesive infrastructure, though.
That's one of its most profound logistical issues. Nevada is one of a handful of states that lacks a continuous interstate highway linking its two major population centers. You have I-15 for Vegas in the south and I-80 for Reno in the north. There's a big gap.
And Las Vegas has had no passenger rail since Amtrak's Desert Wind was discontinued in 1997.
But that is changing. Construction began in 2024 for the privately run Brightline West Rail Line. It aims to reintroduce high-speed service to Southern California, which would be a game changer.
And one transportation quirk that really speaks to the vast distances.
The road trains. Nevada is one of the few states that allows semi-trailer trucks with 3 trailers. They're smaller than the Australian versions, though, because they have to navigate all those steep mountain passes.
Now we get to the consequence of all this rapid, concentrated growth and limited infrastructure. The affordable housing crisis, the data here it's deeply concerning.
This is a massive question mark for the state's long-term sustainability. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, Nevada has the largest discrepancy in the U.S. between available affordable housing and extremely low-income renters.
Only 15 affordable rental homes are available for every 100 extremely low-income households. That's a supply deficit of over 71,000 units. It's staggering.
And think about the financial reality for the backbone of the state's economy, the service workers. The average salary is about $54,800 a year. To affordably rent a single-family home in Vegas, you essentially need a 6-figure income.
And the result is that over 112,000 renters are paying more than half their income just on housing. It's a direct consequence of the state successfully attracting high-income people with its zero-tax environment, which creates immense cost strain on the low-wage workers who keep the whole system running.
For decades, Nevada's cultural identity was built on the transient visitor gambling, shows, conventions. But in the last few years, the state, especially Vegas, has forged this new identity driven by Major League sports.
It's a huge shift in civic identity. Nevada is now home to the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL, the Las Vegas Raiders in the NFL, the Las Vegas Aces in the WNBA, and by 2027, the Oakland A's plan to move there for baseball. These teams create a local loyalty that tourism money just can't buy.
And we can't forget the state's college basketball history either. That built civic pride long before the pro teams arrived. The UNLV Runnin' Rebels program under Coach Jerry Tarkanian it was legendary.
They peaked in the late 80s and early 90s. They won the 1990 NCAA championship against Duke by a record 30 points. It was the most points scored and largest margin of victory in tournament history.
And they followed that by going undefeated through the entire 1991 regular season, which is incredibly rare, before losing a dramatic semifinal game to Duke. Today, Vegas capitalizes on that, hosting numerous college basketball conference tournaments.
And beyond team sports, Vegas has always been a global hub for professional fighting, boxing, MMA, and auto racing with the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It's a place built for spectacle.
And all this growth has only amplified Nevada's political role. Since 1912, Nevada has been carried by the presidential victor in 27 out of 29 elections. That earns its status as a critical national political bellwether. It's seen as a microcosm of the national mood.
But the state's internal politics are a study in centralization and conflict. Clark County and Washoe County, Vegas, and Reno, together they cast 87% of the state's vote, overwhelmingly dominating state politics.
Clark County is a Democratic stronghold. Washoe County, historically Republican, has become a finely balanced swing county, and the rural northern counties remain the most conservative regions, constantly battling the demographic trends of the urban South.
And finally, there's a very unique political feature of Nevada which no other U.S. state offers.
That is the none of these candidates option on the ballot. Since 1975, it's been the only state to offer this choice for all statewide elections. It's a formal, visible protest vote.
But it's important to understand the rule. If none of these candidates gets the most votes, the actual candidate with the next highest total is still elected, right?
Exactly. So while it's a powerful tool for indicating dissatisfaction, it doesn't actually void the election. It's just another example of Nevada trying to maximize personal choice within a tightly controlled system.
What a complex, paradoxical story. A state born from a strategic political gamble rushed into the Union with an $86,000 telegraph to secure a Civil War vote, and defined by its willingness to exploit its own sovereignty for economic gain.
It's a modern story of extremes. A hyper-centralized, diverse population grappling with the fact that 80% of its territory is controlled by the federal government. Its economy thrives on the global high stakes of entertainment and gold mining, but that success has created immense challenges, like the country's largest affordable housing shortage.
Nevada has always successfully monetized vice and necessity, whether it's easy divorce, zero income tax, or legalized gambling. The central question for its future is whether this continuing experiment in maximizing economic liberty can create a sustainable social fabric.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. Nevada today blends these extreme progressive social allowances, cannabis legalization, strong LGBT rights, with some of the country's most draconian criminal penalties, like mandatory minimums for drug offenses. So will this constant dramatic tension between libertarian personal freedom and necessary state control eventually define the sustainability of America's fastest-growing frontier in the 21st century? Or will the internal contradictions of the battle-born state eventually become unsustainable? That is the gamble Nevada takes every single day.